He was shivering with the morning cold, but he knew he would shiver himself warm, and that soon he would be rowing. The door of the house where the boy lived was unlocked, and he opened it and walked in quietly with his bare foot. The boy was asleep, in a cot in the first room, and the old man could see him clearly with the light that came in from the dying moon. He took hold of one foot daintily and held it until the boy woke and turned and looked at him. The old man nodded, and the boy took his trousers from the chair by the bed and, sitting on the bed, pulled them on. The old man went out the door, and the boy came after him. He was sleepy, and the old man put his arm across his shoulders and said, "I am sorry. Give up." The boy said, "It is what a man must do." They walked down the road to the old man's shack, and all along the road, in the dark, barefoot men was moving, carrying the masts of their boats. When they reached the old man's shack, the boy took the rolls of lines in the basket and the harpoon and gaff, and the old man carried the mast with the furled sail on his shoulder. "Do you want coffee?" the boy asked. "We'll put the gear in the boat and then get some." They had coffee from condensed milk cans at an early morning place that served fishermen. "How did you sleep, old man?" the boy asked. He was waking up now, although it was still very hard for him to leave his sleep. "Very well, Madeline," the old man said. "I feel confident today." "So do I," the boy said. "Now I must get your sardines and mine and your fish baits." He brings out gear himself. He never wants anyone to carry anything. "We're different," the old man said. "I let you carry things when you were 5 years old." "I know it," the boy said. "I'll be right back. Captain, the coffee. Wait, we have credit here." He walked off, barefooted, on the charcoal rocks, to the ice house where the baits were stored. The old man drank his coffee slowly. It was all he would have all day, and he knew that he should take it. For a long time now, eating had bored him, and he never carried the lunch. He had a bottle of water in the bow and the skiff. That was all he needed for the day. The boy was back now with the sardines and the two baits warped in a newspaper as they went down the trail to the skiff, feeling the pebbled sand under their feet, and lifted the skiff and slid her into the water. "Good luck, old man." "Good luck," the old man said. He fitted the rope lashings of the oars onto the thole pins, and leaning forward against the thrust of the blaze of the water, he began to roll out the harbor in the dark. There were other boats from the other beaches going out to sea, and the old man heard the dip and push of their oars, even though he could not see them. Now the moon was below the hills. Sometimes someone would speak in a boat, but most of the boats were silent except for the dip of the oars. They spread apart after they were out of the mouth of the harbor, and each one headed for a part of the ocean where he hoped to find fish. The old man knew he was going far out, of the land, and he left the small of the land behind and rode out into the clear, early morning smell of the ocean. He saw the phosphorescency of the Gulf weed in the water as he rolled over the part of the ocean that the fishermen called the Great Well, because there was a sudden deep of 700 fathoms where all sorts of fish congregated, because of the swirl of the current made against the steep walls of the floor of the ocean. Here there were concentrations of shrimp and baitfish, and sometimes schools of squid in the deepest holes, and these rose close to the surface at night where all the wandering fish fed on them. Part 9. In the dark, the old man could feel the morning coming, and as he rowed, he heard the trembling sound as flying fish left the water, and the hissing that their stiff set wings made as they soared away in the darkness. He was very fond of flying fish, as they were his principal friends on the ocean. He was sorry for the birds, especially the small, delicate dark turns that were always flying and looking and almost never finding. And he thought, the birds have a harder life than we do except for the robber birds and the heavy strong ones. Why did they make birds so delicate and fine as those sea swallows, when the ocean can be so cruel? She's a kind and very beautiful. She is kind and very beautiful, but she can also be cruel when it comes so suddenly, and such birds that fly dipping and hunting, with their small sad voices that are made too delicately for the sea. He always thought of the sea as la mal, which is what people call her in Spanish when they love her. Sometimes those who love her say they have things of her, but they are always said as though she was a woman. Well, as though she were a woman. Some of the younger fishermen, those who used buoys and floats for their lines and had motorboats, thought when shark livers had brought so much money, spoke of her as el mal, which is masculine. They spoke of her as a constant or a place or even an enemy. But the old man always thought of her as feminine and something that gave or withheld great favors. And if she did wild or wicked things, it would be because she could not help them. The moon affects her, as it does a woman, she thought. He was rowing steadily, and it was no effort for him, since he kept well within the speed, and the surface of the ocean was flat except for the occasional swirls of the current. He was letting the current do a third of the work, and it started to be light he saw. He was already further out than he had hoped to be at this hour. I worked the deep wells for a week and did nothing, he thought. Today I'll work out where the schools of Bonito and Albacore are, and maybe there will be a big one with them before it's really light. He had his baits out and was drifting with the current. One bait was down, 40 fathoms. The second was at 75, and the third and the four were down in the blue water at 100 and 120 fathoms. Each bait head down, with the shark shank of the hook inside the bait fish, tied and sewed solid, and all the projecting parts of the hook. The curve and the point was covered with fresh sardines. Each sardine was hooked through their eye, so they made half a garland on the projecting steel. There was no part of the hook that a great fish could feel, which was not sweet smelling and good tasting. Part 10. The boy had given him two fresh small tunas, or albacores, which hung the two deepest lines like the plummets, and on the others he had a blue runner and a yellow jack that had been used before, but they were in good condition still and had the excellent sardines, gave them scent and attractiveness. Each line, as thick around as a big pencil, was looped onto a green sap stick that was so that any pull or touch on the bait would make the tip, and each line had 40 phantom coils which he made fast to the other spare coils, so that if it were necessary, a fish could take out over the 300 phantoms of line. Now the man watched the dip of the three sticks over the side of the skiff and rowed gently to keep the lines straight up and down at their proper depth. It was quite light, and any moment now the sun would rise. The sun rose thinly from the sea, and the old man could see the other boats, low on the water and well in towards the shore, spread out across the current. Then the sun was brighter, and the glare came on the waters, and then as it rose clear, the flat sea sent it back at his eyes so that it hurt sharply, and he rowed without looking into it. He looked down to the water and watched the lines that went straight down into the dark of the water. He kept them straighter than anyone did, so that each level in the darkness of the stream there would be a bait waiting exactly where he wished it to be for any fish that swarmed there. Others let them drift with the current, and sometimes there were 60 phantoms when the fisherman thought they were at 100. But he thought, I keep them with precision. 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 Only I have no luck anymore, but who knows? Maybe today. Every day is a new day. It is better to be lucky. But I would rather be exact. Then when luck comes to you, you're ready. The sun has 2 hours higher now. The sun was 2 hours higher now, and it did not hurt his eyes so much to look into the east. There were only 3 boats in sight. Now they showed very low and far inshore. All my life in the early sun, all my life the early sun hurt my eyes, he thought, yet they are still good. In the evening I can look straight into it without getting the blackness. It has more force in the evening too, but in the morning it is painful. Just then he saw a man of war bird with his long black wings circling the sky ahead of him. He made a quick drop, slanting down on his back swept wings. Then circled again. He's got something, the old man said aloud. He's just not looking. He rode slowly and steadily towards where the bird was circling. He did not hurry, and he kept his line straight up and down. But he crowded the current below so that he was still fishing correctly, though faster than he would have fished if he was not trying to use the bird. The bird went higher in the air and circled again, his wings motionless. Then he ducked suddenly. The old man saw a flying fish sprint out of the water and sail desperately over them in the surface. Dolphin, the old man said aloud. Big dolphin. He shipped his oars and brought a small line from under the bow. It had a wire leader and a medium-sized hook, and he baited it with one of the sardines. He let it go over the side and it made its fast in a ring bolt in the stern. Then he baited another line and left it coiled in the shade of the bow. He went back to rowing and watching the long-winged black bird who was working, now low over the water. As he watched the bird dipping again, slanting his wings for the dive, and then swinging them wildly and effectually as he followed the flying fish. The old man could see the slight bulge in the water that the big dolphin raised as they followed the escaping fish. The dolphins were cutting through the water below the flight of the fish and would be in the water, driving at speed, when the fish dropped. It is a big school of dolphin, he thought. They are widespread and the flying fish have little chance. The bird has no chance. The flying fish are too big for him, and they go too fast. He watched the flying fish burst out again and again, and the ineffectual movements of the bird. That school has gotten away from me, he thought. They are moving out too fast and too far, but perhaps I will pick up a stray, and perhaps my big fish is around them. My big fish must be somewhere. The clouds over the land now rose like mountains, and the coast was only a long green line with the gray-blue hills behind it. The water was a dark blue now, so dark that it was almost purple. He looked down into it, and he saw red shifting of the plankton in the dark water, and the strange light the sun made now. He watched his lines to see them go straight down, out of sight, into the water, and he was happy to see so much plankton because it meant fish. The strange light of the sun made the water made and the strange light the sun made in the water, now that the sun was higher, meant good weather, and so did the shape of the clouds over the land. But the bird was almost out of sight now, and had nothing showed on the surface of the water but some patches of yellow, some bleached sargasso weed, and the purple, formalized, iridescent, glaturonous bladder of a Portuguese man of war floating close beside the boat. It turned on its side and then righted itself. It floated cheerfully as a bubble with its long, deadly purple filaments trailing a yard behind it in the water. Aquamala, the man said. You are whore. From where he swung lightly against the oar and looked down into the water and saw the tiny fish that were colored like the trailing flamens and swam between them and under the small shade of the bubble as it drifted. They were immune to its poison, but the man were not. And when some of the filaments would catch on the line, and the rest they were slimy and purple white, and the old man, while the old man was working a fish, he could have welts and sores on his arms and hands, of the sorts that poison ivy or poison oak ran give. But these poisonings from Aquamala came quickly and struck like whiplash. The iridescent bubbles were beautiful, but they were thousand things in the sea, and the old man loved to see the big sea turtles eating them. The turtles saw them, approaching them from the front, then shut their eyes so they were completely carapaced, and ate them, filaments and all. The old man loved to see the turtles eat them, and he loved to walk them on the beach after a storm and hear them pop when stepping on them the horny soles of his feet. He loved green turtles and the hawkbills with their elegance and speed and their great value, and he had a friendly contempt for the huge stupid longheads, yellow in their in their armor plating, strange in their lovemaking, and happily eating the Portuguese men of war with their eyes shut. He had no myths, mythicism about turtles, although he had gone in turtle boats for many years. He was sorry for them. He was sorry for them all, even the great trunk backs. They were as long as the skiff and weighed a ton. Most people are heartless about turtles because a turtle's heart will beat for hours after he had been cut up and butchered. But the old man thought, I have such a heart too, and my feet and hands are like theirs. He ate the white eggs to give himself strength. He ate them all through May to be strong in September and October for the truly big fish. He also drank a cup of shark liver oil each day from the big drum in their shack where many of the fishermen kept their gear. I was there for all fishermen who wanted it. Most fishermen hated the taste, but it was no worse than getting up at the hours that they rose. And it was very good against all colds and grips, and it was good for the eyes. Now the old man looked up and saw the bird was circling again. He's found fish, he said aloud. No flying fish broke the surface, and there were no scattered of bait fish. But the old man watched. A small tuna rose in the air, turned, and dropped headfirst into the water. The tuna shone silver in the sun. The tuna shone silver in the sun, and after he had dropped back into the water, another rose, and they were jumping in all directions, churning the water and leaping in long jumps after the bait. They were circling it and driving it. If they don't travel too fast, I'll get to them. I'll get into them, the old man thought. And he watched the school working the water, uh, and and he watched the school working the water white and the bird now dropping and dipping into baitfish that were forced to the surface in their panic. The bird is a great help, the old man said. Just then the stern line came taut under his foot, where he had kept the loop of the line, and he dropped his oars and felt the weight of the small tuna's shivering pull as he held the line firm and commenced to hold it in. The shivering increased as he pulled in, and he could see the blue back of the fish in the water and the gold of his sides before he swung him over the sides and into the boat. He lay in the stern in the sun, compact and bullet-shaped, his big, unintelligent eyes staring as he thumped his life out the planking of the boat with the quick shivering strokes of his neat fast-moving tail. The old man hit him on the head for kindness and kicked him, his body still shuddering, under the shade of the stern. Albacore, he said out loud. He'll make a beautiful bait. He'll weigh 10 pounds. He did not remember when he first started to talk aloud, or when he was by himself. He had swum when he was by himself in the old days, and he had swum at night sometimes when he was alone steering on his watch in the smacks or in the turtle boats. He had probably started to talk aloud when alone, when the boy had left, but he did not remember. When he and the boy fished together, they usually spoke only when it was necessary. Only when it was necessary. They talked at night or when they were storm-bound by bad weather. It was considered a virtue not to talk unnecessarily at sea, and the old man had always considered it so and respected it. But now he said his thoughts aloud many times since there was no one that they could annoy. If the others heard me talking out loud, they would think that I am crazy, he said out loud. But since I am not crazy, I do not care, and the rich have radio to talk to them in their boats and to bring them to baseball. Now is no time to think of baseball, he thought. Now is the time to think of only one thing, that is which I was born for. There might be a big one around that school, he thought. I picked up only a straggler from the albacore that were feeding. But they were working far out and fast. Everything that shows on the surface today travels very fast, and to the northeast. Can that be the time of the day? Or is it some sign of weather that I do not know? He cannot see the green of the shore, but now only the tops of the green hills, blue hills that showed white, as though they were snow-capped, and the clouds that looked like high snow mountains above them. The sea was very dark, and the light made prisms in the water. The myriad flakes of the plankton were annulled now by the high sun, and it was only the great deep prisms in the blue water that the old man saw now, with its lines going straight down into the water that was a mile deep. The tuna, the fishermen called all the fish of that species tuna, and only distinguished among them by their proper names when they came to sell them or trade them for baits, were down again. The sun was hot, and the old man felt it on the back of his neck, and felt the sweet tickle down his back as he rode. I could just drift, he thought, and sleep, and put on a of line around my tail to wake me. For today is the 85th day, 85 days, and I should fish the day well. Just then, watching his lines, he saw one of the projecting green sticks dip sharply. Yes, he said, yes, and shipped his oars without bumping the boat. He reached out for the line and held it softly between the thumb and the forefinger, or his right hand. He felt no strain nor weight as he held the line lightly. Then it came again. This time it was a tentative pull, not solid or heavy, and he knew exactly what it was. 100 fathoms down, a marlin was eating the sardines that covered the point, and the shark of the hook where the hand-forged hook projected from the head of the small tuna. The old man held the line delicately and softly with his left hand, unleashed it from the stick. Now he could let it run through his fingers without the fish feeling any tension. This far out, he must be huge in this month. He thought, eat them, fish, eat them, please eat them. How fresh they are, and you are down there 600 feet in the cold water in the dark. In that cold water in the dark. Make another turn in the dark and come back and eat them. He felt the light, delicate pulling, and then a harder pull, when a sardines head must have been more difficult to break from the hook. Then there was nothing. Come on, the old man said aloud. Make another turn. Just smell them. Aren't they lovely? Eat them good now, and there's the tuna, hard and cold and lovely. Don't be shy. Fish, eat 'em. He waited with the line between his thumb and his finger, watching it and the other line at the same time, for the fish might have swum up or down. Then came the same delicate pulling touch again. "We'll take it," the old man said out loud. God help him to take it. He did not take it though. He was gone and the old man felt nothing. He can't have gone, he said. Christ knows he can't have gone. He's making a turn. Maybe he has been hooked before and he remembers something of it. Then he felt a gentle touch on the line and he was happy. It was only his turn, he said. He'll take it. He was happy feeling the gentle pull, and then he felt something hard and unbelievably heavy. It was the weight of the fish, and he let the line slip down, down, unrolling off the first of the two reserve coils. As it went down, slipping lightly through the old man's fingers, he still could feel the great weight, though the pressure of his thumb and the finger were almost imperceptible. What a fish, he said. He has it sideways in his mouth now, and he is moving off with it. Then he'll turn and swallow it, he thought. He did not say that because he knew that if he said a good thing, it might not happen. He knew a huge fish. He knew what a huge fish this was, and he thought of him moving away in the darkness with the tuna held crosswise in his mouth. At that moment, he felt him stop moving, but the weight was still there. Then the weight increased and he gave more line. He tightened the pressure of his thumb and finger for a moment, and the weight increased and was going straight down. He's taken it. Now I'll let him eat it well. He let the line slip through his fingers while he reached down with his left hand and made fast the free end of the two reserve coils to loop the other two reserve coils of the next line. He knew he was ready. He had 340 phantom coils of the line in reserve now, as well as the coil he was using. Eat a little more, he said. Eat it well. Eat it so that the point of the hook goes into your heart and kills you, he thought. Come it easy and let me put the harpoon in you. All right, are you ready? Have you been long enough at table? Now, he said out loud and struck hard with both hands, gained a yard of line and then struck again and again, swinging with each arm alternatively on the cord with all the strength of his arms and uh, pivoted weight of his body. Nothing happened. The fish just moved away slowly, and the old man could not raise him an inch. His line was strong and made for heavy fish, and he held it against his back until it was so taut that beads of water were jumping from it. Then it began to make a slow hissing sound in the water, and he still held it. Bracing himself against the thwart and leaning back against the pole, the boat began to move slowly off towards the northwest. The fish moved steadily and they traveled slowly on the calm water. The other baits were still in the water, but there was nothing to be done. I wish I had the boy, the man said out loud. I'm being towards a fish, and I'm toward a towing bit. I can make the line fast, but then he could break it. I must hold him all I can give him the line when he must have it. Thank God he is traveling and not going down. What I'll do if he decides to go down, I don't know. What I'll do if he sounds and dies, I don't know. But I'll do something. There's plenty of things I can do. He held the line against his back and watched it slant in the water and the skiff moving steadily to northwest. This will kill him, the old man thought. He can't do this forever. But 4 hours later, the fish was still swimming steadily out to sea towards the skiff, but the old man was braced solidly with the line across his back. It was noon when I hooked them, and I have never seen them. He pushed his straw hat hard down on his head before he hooked the fish, and it was cutting his forehead. He was thirsty, too, and he got down on his knees and, being careful to not jerk on the line, moved as far into the bow as he could. get, and reached the water bottle with one hand. He opened it and drank a little, and then he rested against the boat. He rested sitting on the unstepped mast and the sail, and tried not to think, but only to endure. Then he looked behind him and saw that no land was visible. That made no difference, he thought. I can always come in on the glow from Havana. There are 2 more hours before sunset, and maybe he will come up before that. If he doesn't, maybe he will come up with the moon. If he does not do that, maybe he will come up with the sunrise. I have no cramps and I feel strong. It is he that has the hook in his mouth. But what a fish to pull like that. He must have his mouth shut tight on the wire. I wish I could see him. I wish I could see him once only to know what I have against me. The fish never changed his course, nor his direction, all that night, as far as the man could tell from watching the stars. It was cold after the sun went down, and the old man's sweat dried cold his back and his arms and his own legs. During the day, he had taken the sack covered in the bait box and spread it in the sun to dry. After the sun went down, he tied it around his neck so that it hung over his back and cautiously worked it down under the line that was across his shoulders now. Part 16. The sack cushioned a line, and he found a way of leaning towards against the boat that he was almost comfortable. The position is actually somewhat less intolerable, but he thought of it as almost comfortable. I can do nothing with him, and he can do nothing with me, he thought. Not as long as he keeps this up. Once he stood up and urinated over the side of the skiff and looked at the stars and checked his course. The line showed like a photographer streak in the water straight out from his shoulders. They were moving more slowly now, and the glow of Havana was not so strong, so that he knew the current must be carrying them to the eastward. If I lose the glare of Havana, we must be going more to the eastward, he thought. For if the fish's course held true, I must see it for many more hours. I wonder how the baseball came out and how the Grand Leagues today, he thought. It would be wonderful to do this with a radio, he thought. Thinking of it always, thinking of what you're doing. You must do nothing stupid. Then he said out loud, I wish I had the boy to help me and to see this. No one should be alone in their old age, he thought. But it is unavoidable. I must remember to eat the tuna before he spoils in order to keep strong. Remember, no matter how little you want to, that you must eat him in the morning. Remember, he said to himself. During the night, two porpoises came around the boat, and he could hear them rolling and blowing. He could tell the difference between the blowing noise of the male maid and the signing blow of the female. They're good, he said. They play and make jokes and love one another. They are brothers like the flying fish. They began to pity the great fish that he had hooked. He is wonderful and strange, and who knows how old he is? Thought, never have I such a strong fish, nor one who acted so strangely. Perhaps he is too wise to jump. He could ruin me by jumping or by a wild rush, but perhaps he has been hooked many times before, and he knows that this is how he should make his fight. He cannot know that it is only one man against him, nor that it is an old man. But what great fish he is, and what he will bring in the markets if the flesh is good.